Very well. Any other public comment on this during the public comment period?
Yeah, I'm a parent of a Annie Yates student, and well, we've heard quite a litany of complaints here, mostly centered around the cutting of staff that the board is engaging in, and of course we also heard some comments regarding the substandard performance of our superintendent, Mr. Rubio. What I heard here was really most compelling. Is the one woman that said that we need to build Emery, not destroy Emery. And that's a really compelling point to me, because that's in fact what we're doing. We're destroying it, we're not building. What this board has done is they have decided to cut their way to excellence. I call it cutting to excellence. There's a way to avoid these kind of cuts, but so far it's fallen on deaf ears here for the most part, and that is to increase revenue by increasing the number of students that we have here at the district. And the way to do that, the only way to do that, since the Center of Community Life space site is too small, is to keep Annie Yates open. And that's how we increase the number of students that go to Emery, and that's the way we increase our revenue, so we don't have to have these kinds of cuts. And I hope it's been made pretty clear to you guys here tonight. You can't cut your way to excellence, even though you have sort of intimated that you can. And I wanted to talk really quickly about, briefly, the comments I heard from a couple of the teachers regarding Mr. Rubio's, the superintendent's, attendance database and the intimidation of teachers. Now, I spoke to Mr. Rubio about this very subject last autumn, and I expressed my desire that this district should treat the teachers as professionals. Mr. Rubio is a professional. The teachers are professionals. The teachers need to be treated as professionals. I pay Mr. Rubio's salary. I mean, if Mr. Rubio needs to know where every teacher is every second, well, I want to know where he is every second. How about a time clock for the superintendent, so I can see make sure he's coming to work on time? Or a better solution, how about we trust Mr. Rubio because he's a professional, and no, John, you don't need to fill out a time clock. Why? Because you're a professional. But guess what? So are the teachers. So we need to start treating the teachers as professionals. You can come down like a ton of bricks on the teachers like the way you are, but there's going to be negative consequences. You need to be open to the idea that there could be unintended consequences to a hugely authoritarian regime that you're setting up. And I just think it's wrong-headed. And then I wanted to say briefly, we heard from the board president, Mr. Affelt, at the last meeting. We're talking about the budget problems we're having. And I heard him say something that, as a parent, was so deflating. We're talking about, he was mentioning that we need to achieve solvency. And 50, according to his calculations, 50 more students will bring solvency. Well, this is after a regime of huge amount of cuts that we've been talking about here tonight that people don't appreciate. So what Mr. Affelt is talking about here, the board president, is we need to, here's how hard the bar is set at Emery. Solvency, that's what we're trying to get. After a regime of cuts, solvency. That is so deflating and so disappointing. I think we should put our bar a little higher than just trying to achieve solvency. I think we should be trying to achieve actual excellence. And the way you do that is not by cutting and not by aiming for solvency.
Thank you, Mr. Donahue. Any other public comments tonight? Okay, that's going to close the public comment period. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. It's very important that the board hears your perspective on matters that are on your mind. Just a point of clarification, this is not an agenda item, the issue of the counselor at the classroom and his or her assignment. That is something that the board does not control, individual assignments of individual teachers or personnel, and I don't think you want your board micromanaging the district at that level. So, but we appreciate hearing your concerns, and our job is to manage one person, and that's the superintendent. So your input is helpful in that regard. I heard a couple comments that I just want to clarify my understanding. The position is not being cut. We're not getting rid of a counselor. There will be a counselor. There will be counseling services. My understanding of the proposal is to reduce the position from a full-time to a less than full-time. I personally take your comments to be expressions of support for Mr. Patterson in that position or in any counseling services. So that's what I'm. But I just want to clarify, to the extent that people think there's not going to be any counseling, particularly our students, there will be counseling services one way or another next year. So that's the only clarifying point I want to make on that. But again, thank you for giving us your feedback on that.
Mr. Alfred, who do we go to regarding Mr. Patterson? Because we want Mr. Patterson to be our counselor.
We understand, and I think you've made your thoughts known to the superintendent, but you can make them known to him privately as well. That we're going to move on to this one on. All right, we're going to move on to reports. Are there any?
I'm sorry, can others comment on public comment as well?
It's not really, you can make a comment.
Thank you.
But we can't have a discussion
I'm
about.
not looking to discuss.
About an item.
So I just want to throw out there that hearing the community is really powerful for me, particularly students and teachers. I think we don't get enough of that at the board meetings, and I appreciate those of you who came out and spoke tonight. I do wonder how we can be a full-service community school if we're not able to staff even a full-time counselor at the high school. I worry about those sort of things, and so I want to share that. You know, I think we focus sometimes too much on what's outside the school building and not enough on what's inside, and so I want to be very clear on that. Should be the focus. And then Mr. Salvatore said something that really worried me, and I'd like to not let that go, and that's that we only have 20 kinder students registered for the fall. And so I don't know if a clarifying question is discussion, but it seems to me that that's a critical number when we're building towards solvency, and we only have 20 students registered for the fall. Was that an accurate number?
Am I Are we having a conversation here?
It does sound like we're getting a conversation. I think that's a topic probably for an agenda item, maybe for the next board meeting going into the end of the.
We have to agendize enrollment?
I think it's an
I would be
important
glad.
topic. Would you like it? I'd like it agendized.
And I'd be glad to email the board the current numbers. That's no problem.
Okay.
Are you?
It seems to me that it's a yes or no question. Either it doesn't seem to me that I'm not looking to debate on whether or not it's 20 kids enrolled for the fall. It was a point of clarification.
Okay. Well, maybe you can address the information item in your report,
Sure.
to the extent you've got
Sure.
information. So we're going to move on to reports. The CSEA has